Okay, welcome everyone. As we begin on the bottom of Yud Beis and Beis, we welcome in Aaron Swade, Mel Zachter, Dr. Black, Irving Fishbaum, Shalom Fogel, Michael. We welcome in Chaim Lerner, Yitzi Fuchs, Marshall Castle, Stephen Holtzman, Mo Kushner, Nachman Chapler. Here in the shul, we have Saba, we have Avram Rezepkowitz, Reb Kramer, Michal Avram, Ruvain Shannon will be joining us shortly. And let's see, we welcome in now Shimon Klein, who has just joined us. We are sponsored, and here comes Moshe Lehman. We are sponsored by A.B. Spry, that all his children should be healthy bavas in the schos of learning all the bavas. And we also are sponsored by Michal Avram with the hope that he'll finish Shas and Yirtzeh Hashem many times over. And here we have, with great joy, we welcome in Richard Rosenzweig. Richard, it's great to have you. And Baruch Ian is joining us now from sunny Florida, together with Mo Kushner, who's also joining us from Florida, from Deerfield Beach. So we have an update for Reb Elia Yaffe is back from Chicago, and his 7-year-old granddaughter has had a successful transplant. We'll continue learning for Shendel Tema Bas Rachel Zlata. We also have an update from several people from Barry that he is in a chipper mood, although he is in a lot of pain. He still is in critical care, and we continue to learn for Pinchas Menachem ben Leah. He should have a refuah shalema b'sech she'achel Yisrael. We are holding. This is
also sponsored tonight.
Tomorrow night, no?
Tonight, the Gimel Adar. Tonight it's Gimel Adar.
Oh, it's Gimel Adar. It's for my good friend Jeannie Fogel, Shalom Fogel's mother, and her name is not Jeannie. Her name, what's the name?
Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef.
Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef. Neshama should have an aliyah. She should be a militzis yosher for her family, for all of us and all of Klal Yisrael. But also, I'm going to sponsor the Chumash for her as well. She was a very nice lady. I remember that she and her husband Jack, Yaakov Ben Zev, right? Yaakov Zev, because I remember the outside is Zionov and Zev is Zionov. Yeah. They used to play paddleball together as a couple. It was always very nice to see. You remember those days, no? Anyway, we are holding by Elohaditnan, which is 5 lines from the bottom of Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, 12b, and that would be 12b4 for those that are using the Yad Scroll. We also have people using the Sansino here. That's old school. The first time I learned Shas was before Artzko was around. I used the Sansino. I used the entire Sansino. There's a set of it here. People said, why don't you give it away? I couldn't part with it because it has the birth marks of my kids on it. I used to give them feedings while I learned from it.
Rebbe, the index on the Sansino is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I don't know how they did it.
What?
With nice Arabs, they need a good, at the end, where you can look up things. They need like a condenser, that sort of thing. It tells you where to go for everything.
Yeah.
It makes scholarship easy. That's what the purpose of it is, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge work. It's a huge work. And we welcome in Rabbi Kranz, who just joined us, and we welcome in Yitzi Muller, and That's Shimon Deer, who's with us now. We are starting 5 lines from the bottom, and let's relax and let's concentrate, because this Gemara needs a lot of concentration. Elohadisnan, that which we learned in the Mishnah, Kaisvin Shtar L'Loiva, that we could write a star for Marshall. That Marshall owes me $100,000, which is no surprise. Afal pi she'ein milva imai, even though I'm not around. Now the question is, how can we do that? The witnesses sign it and say that say that Marshall owes me $100,000, which then gives me the ability to collect from people that bought stuff for Marshall. But maybe the loan never took place. How could we be allowed to let such a document be written? Why aren't we concerned that maybe Marshall wrote it, planning to take a loan for me in Nisan, in the spring, and in reality, since they didn't see the loan take place, the loan never took place until the fall, but I'll be able to collect with this document, since it has a date, which was illegal, it has a date from Nisan, I'll be able to collect from the buyers of Marshall before the loan was really given. I could seize from the buyers illegally. Again, let's understand this. How could witnesses sign a document to Marshall dated in the spring that a loan took place if they didn't see the loan take place? That, if they sign it, that gives me the right to take from Marshall's buyers from the spring, even if the loan didn't take place until the fall. So how could they allow that? Amar Ravasi, so Ravasi says we're talking about a special shtar. Amar Ravasi, wow, look at this. This Gemara is missing pages. Huh. Wow, it's missing from Yud Beis to Tes Zayin. That's amazing. Happens to be, I have my computer over here, so it just happens to be I plugged it in today to charge it up.
That was for Sota. They didn't use the Kankanta,
Yeah.
And they may have used it for the bitter water.
It wasn't Saita.
Maybe that indicates that the Mashiach is coming, if we can do that again, right?
Okay, let's just get the right page over here. So, says the Gemara, it's talking about a special shtar. Bishtare hakno. This is a shtar, although the Rosh, the father of Ashkenazic Rishonim, although the Rosh says he doesn't understand why Marshall would do such a thing, here it's talking about Bishtare hakno, where Marshall says that he is giving me a lien on his property, even without a loan. He's giving me a lien on his property, and this shtari akno would show up in a title search. So therefore, if Dr. Black is going to buy from Marshall, he's going to know that there is such a lien, because he gave me a shtari akno. So therefore, there's nothing wrong with that. The Hashaban Nafsha, he gave me a legal lien on all of his property. And when Marshall buys from him, he has to know that from the spring, from Nisan, I have a prior lien. Says the Gemara, Ihachi Mas Nisan de Ketani. In our Mishnah, listen how the Gemara asks so cleverly. Mas Nisan de Ketani, if Mark finds a document saying that Marshall owes me $100,000. So Masnisin de Ktaniyim Yesh B'Hem Achrayis Nechosim, if there's a security clause, which gives me a lien on Marshall's property, lo yazer. He's not allowed to return the shtar to me. V'ukimna, and we established that the Mishnah is talking about kishechayev moida, where Marshall admits to owing me the money. And the reason why Mark can't return it to me is because we're afraid. We're afraid, and Gedalia, it's good to have you. I was starting to get very worried over here that Chasana was getting to your head. And the reason why Mark can't return it to me is because of the worry that it would be predated. Umishum shema kosav lelavas benisan, maybe the document was written that the loan took place in Nisan, v'lo lava at Tishrei, but really the loan wasn't given until the fall. And if Mark returns it to me, I could collect from the buyers illegally. V'asi l'mitrav l'kucha shaloi kedin. The Gemara says, I don't understand. Why would we be concerned about that? Listen to the cleverness of this question. Amai lo yazer, why can't Mark return it to me? Nirze, let's see. Ibashtar hakna, if it's a document where Marshall simply gives me a lien, so then he gave me a lien from Nisan, there's nothing to worry about. He can return it to me. Ibashtar hakna, shabbat le nafshe. And ibashtar de lo yakna, and if it was a simple loan, well, we just said the rule is that witnesses won't sign unless they saw the loan. We said when the creditor is not there, they wouldn't write the note. And therefore it must have been that I was there and I gave him the loan in Nisan. And therefore I have a lien from Nisan. So why can't they return it to me? So the Gemara answers, remember this was a document that was found on the floor. And since it was a document that was found on the floor, that casts a suspicion that the document wasn't made correctly. Amalei answers the Gemara, Amalei, Ravasi, Afal Gav Dishtori de Lav Hakna, even though it was a regular promissory note, even though normally, when the creditor is not there, when I wasn't there, we wouldn't write it, and therefore the fact that it's dated in Nisan shows that I actually gave the loan in Nisan, which would then not hurt the buyers. Mas Nisan Kavan Ninafal, since this note was found on the floor, Israelay, it has a suspicion, it's flawed, and we're concerned that maybe the witnesses signed it even though they didn't witness the delivery of the money, of the $100,000 from me to Marshall, and therefore maybe it was predated, and therefore they won't return it to me because I might take from the buyers illegally. That's one answer. Abaya has a completely different spin over here. Abaya says, listen, the din is that Eidav b'chasumav zochenlai. The din is that witnesses that sign on a document and the document is handed over to me, that gives me a legal lien on Marshall's property, va'afilu shtarei delav hakna. Even if it wasn't simple a shtar that was made just to give me a lien on Marshall's property. As soon as witnesses sign a shtar, that makes it binding. Now, because he doesn't want to learn over here that we're afraid because it was on the floor, they didn't do things right. Since we established that if it's not a simple lien document, if the creditor is not there, lo kasvinan, we won't write the document, we don't have to, it's not likely, even if we found it on the floor, that they didn't follow due process. So then, if that's the case, and we say that the shtar is binding, so then why can't Mark return the shtar to me? Why, if it has achrayas? So we'll see that this is a difficult Gemara because the Gemara doesn't really tell us how Abaye learns. The Gemara tells us that later, 10 lines down. But I'll give you a scoop. Abaye learns over here the reason why Mark can't return the document to me, even though Marshall admits that he owes me the money. And even though, since there's witnesses signed on it, that means that there's an automatic lien. We're afraid of Kinunya. We're afraid that there's a conspiracy between me and Marshall. What's the conspiracy? We're afraid that Marshall already paid me the $100,000. But if I get the note back in my hand, then I can claim, we could claim together that Marshall didn't pay me. Marshall doesn't have any money. He's like always stone broke. And we'll take it away from his buyers, and then behind closed doors, me and Marshall will split it. That's called a conspiracy. So because we're afraid of a second collection, Mark can't return it to me, even though Marshall admits that he didn't pay it. Because we're afraid that maybe Marshall did pay already. But now we have a golden egg. I'll say Marshall didn't pay. Marshall doesn't have any money. Marshall sold land to poor Dr. Block. And now we'll take the land away from Dr. Block, and me and Marshall will split it 50-50. We're afraid of a Kinunya. Let's see it inside. Says the Gemara, well, what are you saying? You're saying that it's binding because the witness is signed. Elahadisnan, Mark is finding things. Now that he's, home from work, he has eagle eyes, and he's finding things. Matzah gitei nashim, if he found a get for women. Shichrure avodim, documents of emancipation of slaves. Daitike matana, wills, deathbed wills. B'shavrim, and receipts. Harizelo yazu, he can't return it. He can't give it to the Eved because maybe the master wrote it but never emancipated him. Maybe the husband wrote the get but never gave it to her. So Harizelo yazu shemek suvin hayu. Maybe they were written v'nimlach aleim shaloi litnam, and they changed their mind not to give it. But the question is, if it's binding as soon as the witnesses signed it, so then you could give it because it became binding as soon as the witnesses signed it. It says that it becomes binding as soon as they signed it. So that the answer here is obvious. That's only if it's given over to the person. That's only if it was given to the Eved, it was given to the wife. But now the Gemara says, how does Abaye answer how does Abaye's pshat work? Abaye's pshat doesn't seem to work. Because here it says that if Mark finds this document that Marshall owes me $100,000, and Marshall admits that he owes me the $100,000, we said that if it has a security clause that I could collect from the buyers, Mark can't give it to me. But why not? If it became binding when the witnesses signed it, and Marshall admits that he owes it to me, and it became binding when the witnesses signed it, so it's binding from the spring, what's written on the note, then why can't Mark return it to me? As the Gemara right away asks, if you find promissory notes, if there's a security clause, that means that I could collect from the buyer. Lo yazer, v'kimna, and we established it's talking about kishechayiv moide, that Marshall admits to owing the money, and we said the concern was that maybe he wrote it in the spring, but he didn't take the loan until Tishrei. That's good. That by a star that gives an automatic lien, it's binding from the date. Mukila, he'll say that this is talking about B'shtarei de Lava Knaisa, where it's not a star of an automatic lien, and therefore that's why Mark can't return it to me, because we're afraid that if he returns it to me, maybe it's predated, and I'll collect from Dr. Block earlier than the loan was given. Ukadamrina. But according to Abaye, that says as soon as the witnesses sign it, one's bound to the date. So then, even if the loan wasn't given yet, it's still binding on that date. So then why can't Mark return it to me? Michael, maybe let Mark return it to me, because I could collect from Dr. Block from that date. Says the Gemara. So here, as I told you, we first get to the pshat of Abaye now. The reason of the Mishnah is the chayish lepiroyinu lekanunya. We're worried about that maybe Marshall already paid me, and if Mark returns it to me, we'll both make a conspiracy and say he never paid me, and Marshall will of course say that he's broke, and then I'll take the money illegally away from Dr. Block, collecting it a second time, and Marshall and I will split it. Says the Gemara, but according to Shmuel, you see here, Michal Avram, we have like you said, a sumchus, a well-known statement of sumchus. Here's a well-known statement of Shmuel, that Shmuel in Shas does not worry about that two people will conspire. Right? Shmuel says Jews don't behave that way. Right? That two people will conspire to bilk Dr. Block out of $100,000. So it's good if he holds like Rav Asi that the only time that we're not worried about a predated shtar is the Amar B'Shtari Akno, when it's a shtar that gives a lien automatically. Muke Masnis, and they'll establish the Mishnah B'Shtari the Lav Akno, where it was a regular loan, and that's the reason why Mark can't return it to me, because what might have happened is that we're worried that maybe the shtar was written in the spring, but the loan wasn't given until the fall, so that if he returns me the shtar, I could collect illegally 6 months early from Dr. Block. Right? Dr. Block did a title search, and he didn't see anything going on in the spring, so he safely bought the land, and now Mark is going to return it to me, and I'm going to take this predated shtar and take it away from Dr. Block, the buyer. But, says Gemara, but if he holds like Abaye that it becomes binding through the witnesses, and he's not worried about a conspiracy, Shmuel will learn the Mishnah a different way. Shmuel will learn the Mishnah is talking about where Marshall doesn't admit to owing me the money. And that's why Mark can't return it to me. Because since Marshall doesn't admit to owing me the money, maybe Marshall paid me and it fell from him. Says the Gemara, Shmuel mukel masnisen kishe'ein chayev moida. But there's a problem with that too. Because our Mishnah says that if it doesn't have a security clause, then Mark could return me the document. But if Marshall doesn't admit it, then he shouldn't be able to return me the document, because I'm going to collect from Marshall's property itself, from his free property. And how could Mark return it to me if Marshall doesn't admit? Maybe it fell from him. Or maybe he wrote the document and never took the loan. Or maybe it's a forgery. Says the Gemara, as the Gemara asks, if it doesn't have a security clause, Why could Mark return me the document? Nay, even though I can't, since it doesn't have a security clause, I can't collect it from mortgage properties, from Dr. Black, from a buyer, but I could collect from Marshall's free property. I could take away his shop. I could take away his tractor, right? And how could Mark return it to me if Marshall doesn't admit it? Maybe it fell from him. Maybe it didn't fall from me. Maybe it fell from him, and I had returned the star, and he had already paid me. Says the Gemara. You see, as we welcome in Ruvain Shanit, who makes it back after doing a mitzvah for his wife, says the Gemara, I took a good guess. I want you to always remember that I have very good hearing. And I also could multitask. So while we're talking, I noticed that some people are on their phones. The Gemara says, even though the phones are under the table, the Baruch is smiling because he knows it's true. I even see what's going on in Deerfield Beach. Perceptive is okay. But anyway, Shmuel Mukei L'mas Nisan Kishe'ein Chayev Moed, says the Gemara. But Ihachi Kiein Ben Achrayis Nechasim. But even if it doesn't have a security clause, Amay Yarzer, why could Mark return the shtar to me? Even though I can't collect from the mortgage property from Dr. Black. So now the Gemara pulls out another halacha. Very interesting halacha. You see, Shmuel holds that a document that doesn't have a security clause is a flawed document. A document that doesn't have a security clause is not a good document, because it only could be binding if it gives a lien on something. Since this document doesn't have a security clause, it's not a good document. And since it's not a good document, I can't collect from Marshall.
It's not enforceable.
I can't collect from Marshall. And since I can't collect from Marshall, so Mark could return it to me. So now the Gemara is going to ask, well, if I can't collect with it, why should Mark return it to me? What's it used for? And the answer is, I could use it as a cork. I could use it as a cork for my astis mamanti. That's all it's worth for. Says the Gemara, let's see it inside. Says the Gemara, Shmuel Mukele, it says the Gemara, Shmuel Atame. Shmuel goes according to his reasoning. The Amar Shmuel, Reb Meir was wont to say, Shtar chayv she'ein bo yachrayis nechasim, a shtar chayv that doesn't have a security clause, ain't a guy v'loy mishabdei v'loy mibnei chara. You can't collect for him at all. And therefore, you're right, Marshall doesn't admit, but Mark could give it to me because I can't collect with it anyway. Says Gemara, so then why should Mark give it to me? What's it worth? Why should he return it to me? Says, I could use it, I don't want the fizz to go out of my astis pamanti. I could use it as a cork. I could put it as a cork on my jug. So now the Gemara, Shalmalva says, Gemara, well, but why should Mark give it to me? He should give it. Why doesn't he give it to Marshall to use as a cork? Why does he give it to me? I mean, I understand why he gives it to me, because he likes me better. But the case could have been the other way around. So why does he give it to me? Give it to Marshall. The answer is simple. Marshall says that he never took the loan, so he's admitting that the document never happened. Says the Gemara, the Leiva is saying, Lo haya dvar me'aylam. By the way, Lo haya dvar me'aylam, if you ever see the expression, Michal Avram, get used to this expression, you'll have it all over the Bavas. Lahadam. What does it mean? Lahadam? That means lo yahayu dvar me'olam. It never happened. Never happened. Somebody comes over to Michal Avram. So where's that tomahawk steak you promised me? Ladam. I never promised you no tomahawk steak. Maybe a skirt steak, but not a tomahawk steak. Ladam. Lo yahayu dvar me'olam. It never happened. As we welcome in Abe Arbach and a lot of other people that are joining us here, we have all of a sudden, Baruch Hashem, it's looking up. We have 30 Zoomers. It started off very slow this evening, but all 30 of us are really, really waiting to have Barry back. He was doing so well, and now he's in such pain. 15 bones broken. Unbelievable.
Can I ask something on this? On what we said about what sheet of Kanunya that we're koshish for that?
Yes.
If we're koshish for Kanunya, then any star could happen. The person could pay cash, even a regular star, and then claim that he never collected, and then they could be in cahoots. I mean, then you never have any star that's really guaranteed.
The Kanunya is a concern only because it's on the floor. So we really don't know what the circumstances are. Otherwise, then we can never trust the star.
Yeah, that's what I was
So therefore, we only worry about it when it's on the floor.
Okay.
Now the Gemara gives us some summations over here as we start the top of Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Now, if this Gemara, by the way, is giving you a little bit of a headache, this is the kind of headache that you want to have, because this is the headache that you take with you to Olam Haba, L'neitzach Netzachin, Fum Tzara Agra. According to the hardship, is the reward. And this Gemara does stretch us. There's no question about it. As Berish made it from Baltimore. He's in a trade show in Baltimore, and he made it, Berish. I'm glad you made it. So the Gemara now tells us, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Machloikis, this is the simple Machloikis. Machloikis b'she'ein chayiv moida. Where Marshall says that it's not true, I don't owe money to Rabbi Weiss, and therefore that's why the Rameir says that even so, Mark could return me the document, because shtar she'ein bo achrayis nechasim, since it's not a legal shtar anyway, because it doesn't have a security clause, and like Michal Avram said, it's not enforceable. So I can't collect anyway. Certainly can't collect from Marshall's buyers, from Dr. Black. I can't even collect and take Marshall's shop. And therefore, Mark could return it to me just to use as toilet paper. The Rabbanan say, that you can't collect from the mortgage property, but you could collect from Marshall, and therefore Mark can't return it to me because maybe it fell from Marshall, and maybe the debt was already paid and he doesn't owe me any money. Or maybe he wrote it, but he decided not to take the loan. But in the event that Marshall admits that he owes me the money, Divrei Akol Yazer, everybody holds that Mark could return it to me, and even if it has a security clause, we're not worried that it was already paid and there's a conspiracy. Rabbi Yochanan says, Machloikis kishechayev moida. Machloikis is where Marshall admits that he owes me the money. The Rameir holds, shtar she'ein bo achrayis nechasim. Rameir holds that a shtar that doesn't have a security clause, mimishabdehu deloy gavi, you can't collect from mishubadim, avo mimnei chayrei migvei, but you could collect from, he holds that you could collect from Marshall's property, and therefore since Marshall admits that he owes me the money, so since Marshall admits that he owes me the money, and I can't collect from Dr. Black, because there's no security clause, so we don't have to worry that maybe it's a predated shtar. So therefore, Mark could return to me, the creditor, the document. The Rabbanan hold, even if it doesn't have a security clause, I could still collect from Dr. Black. This is the other swing opinion, and that is that we consider that even if a document doesn't have a security clause, that's a basic part of a document, and we say achrayus toyes sefer. The fact that it's missing the security clause is only a mistake of the scribe. It's only a clerical error, and we assume that I automatically have a security clause. As the Gemara says, Rabbanan Sabrei Mishabdei Nami Gavi. I could collect even from Dr. Black. As Rashi says, Kid Mafarshel Kamon Achrayas Toys Seifru. And therefore, since I could collect even from Dr. Black, the Chacham hold that Mark can't return it to me because we're afraid of a conspiracy. And that is, we're afraid that maybe, even though Marshall says that he still owes me the money, maybe Marshall already paid me, and he just saying that because he doesn't have any cash, and I'm going to take the $100,000 from the buyer, Dr. Black, and then behind closed doors, we're going to split it 50-50. As Rashi says, Chayshin on the Parayin or the Kanonia. But if Marshall doesn't agree, he says, "Oh no, I didn't. I never took this loan." Everybody says that we don't return it. The chayshin on the pirayin, because we're afraid that maybe it was already paid and it fell for Marshall. Tanya Kavase de Rabbi Yochanan. We have a brisa like Rabbi Yochanan. V'tiyufta de Rabbi Elazar b'chada, and it refutes Rabbi Elazar in one way, even though we're going to see it refutes Rabbi Elazar in two ways. We're going to see at the end of the daf what this means.
Two ways, right?
Huh?
Was it Rabbi Shmuel two ways?
Again. Tiyufta de Rabbi Elazar b'chada. It's a tiyufta of Rabbi Elazar in one way, even though we're going to see momentarily that Rabbi Elazar is going to be refuted in two ways. So the Gemara is going to have to address that. And like B'chol Avram jumped the gun, Tiyufta de Shmuel b'tarte, and a refutation of Shmuel in two ways. Now, let's see it inside. Matzah shtari chayv. If Mark finds a promissory note saying that Marshall owes me $100,000, v'yesh b'em achrayas nechasim, and it has a security clause that I could collect from the buyers. Afal pi sheshnei moedim, even though both of us agree that the wasn't paid yet, lo yazu lo lezeh v'lo lezeh. Mark better hold on to it with his paws. He better hold on to it with his sticky fingers, because again, this makes it clear that even though Marshall says, no, I didn't pay it, we're very suspicious. As Rabbi Kranz pointed out, this was on the floor. So really it was on the floor because it was paid already and it was junked. But then, now that Mark found it, we began to see dollar signs. We could say it wasn't paid yet. Marshall doesn't have a nickel to his name. And then we'll take the money from the buyer, we'll take the money from Dr. Black and split it. If it doesn't have a security clause, so Bisman Shaloiva, where Marshall agrees that he owes me the money, so the only person that stands to lose is him, and he agrees he still owes me the money, Malva. So then Mark should return me the money. Ain't Aloiva, but if he doesn't agree, so it's very possible that it fell from him and he paid it already, or that he fell from him and he never took the loan. He wrote it, but he never took the loan. Lo yaza lo lezeh v'lo lezeh. Divrei Rameir. This is the opinion of Rameir. Rameir oimer shtar sheyesh b'hem achrayis. A shtar that has a security clause. Goyva menechasim mishabadim. You could collect from mortgage properties. V'she'ein b'hem achrayis, and if it doesn't have a security clause, you could collect from free property, which is different than we said earlier. We said, Rameir said that if it doesn't have a security clause, it's non-enforceable, and you can't collect from either. The Chachamim say, Echad zeh ve'echad zeh, goyva menechasim mishabadim. In either case, because Achrayis is a toy cipher. In either case, even if it doesn't have a security clause, you could still collect from Nechasim Mishubadim, and therefore Mark doesn't return it because we're afraid of kinunya, we're afraid of conspiracy. So the Gemara says, Tiyufta de Rabbi Lazar b'chada. This is a refutation of Rabbi Lazar in one point. Now, if you remember, I told you that we're going to see that this is going to be a refutation of Rabbi Lazar in 2 points. So let's see it inside. Tiyufta de Rabbi Lazar b'chada, da'amal l'Rameir. For Rabbi Lazar said that according to Rameir, shtar shein b'yachrayis, since it doesn't have a lien, it's non-enforceable and you can't even collect from free property from Marshall's shop. And the only thing is worth is to use it as a court. It's a tiyufta Rabbi Lazar b'chada da'amal Rameir shein b'yachrayis, shtar shein b'yachrayis. You can't even collect from free property. But while here it says, and also Rabbi Lazar said, Bein l'Rameir, Bein l'Rabbana, both according to Rameir and according to Rabbana, Lo chayshinan l'kanunya. We're not worried about a conspiracy. But this Brisa says, Brisa ktani, shtar she'ein b'yachrayis nechasim, a shtar that doesn't have a security clause, according to Rameir, mimishabdehu d'lo gavi. You can only not collect from the buyer, from Dr. Black. It is enforceable. And the Ketani, and it says, Bein l'Rameir, Bein l'Rabbanan, chayshinan l'kanunya. We are worried about conspiracy. The Ketani, afal pisha shnei amaydim, even if they're both in agreement, if it has a security clause, lo yazel lo lezeh v'lo lezeh, and that must be because we're concerned, even though it's chayiv maid, even though Marshall admits, we're concerned about a conspiracy. Alma chayshinan l'kanunya. So as I told you, the Gemara was going to ask, then what do you mean it's a refutation of Rabbi Lazar in 1 point? V'hahani tartehu. These are 2 points. Says the Gemara, chadahu, it's considered one, the chad tamhu. It's based, the reason why Rabbi Lazar learns this way is based on one principle. The mishum de ka'amar Rabbi Lazar, since Rabbi Lazar says the machlokes is talking about where Marshall doesn't admit, since the Ka'amar Rabbi Lazar machlokes b'she'ein chayiv maida, where Marshall doesn't admit, that's why he has to learn the 2 things. He has to learn that we still don't return. We have to learn that since Marshall doesn't admit it, why does Mark still return it to me? Because Rameir holds you can't collect from Bnei Chayrin; it's not enforceable. And what's the reason? What's the reason whereby? What's the reason whereby that he doesn't learn? It's talking about chayiv maida. He doesn't learn. It's talking about where Marshall admits, because there he would say that Mark could return it to me because he's not concerned about conspiracy. So the fact that he learns the sugya of ein chayev maida, humataritz haki, he holds of these 2 opinions. So it's one principle that causes 2 halachas that the Brisa doesn't agree with. Whoa, that is a real mouthful of a daf, and I will tell you that you heard it from me, but I went it over 3 times before I said it to you, so the fact that you might have to go it over again should not come as a surprise. Tomorrow in Yitz Hashem we have a Chumash share. I had planned to give a Purim share, but I looked on my 7,500 shiurim I have actually 7,498 shiurim on Torah anytime, and I don't have one shir on Pekudei. So I decided to give a shir on Pekudei. So tomorrow night will be on Pekudei, and we're going to learn the Mishnah Yomis now, Rabbi Isai.